first line I chose is by Juliet when she finds out that Romeo is a Montague. And she says, "Prodigious birth of love it is to me, that I must love a loathed enemy." And I like it because Juliet's getting mad at love for making her fall in love with Romeo, and because he's a Montague and they're enemies. Next quote I chose is by Romeo when he's watching Juliet in her window, and he says, "But soft, what light through yonder window breaks? It is the east, and Juliet is the sun." And I like it because he's watching Juliet and admiring her and just talking about how beautiful she is and how much he loves her. The third line I chose is said by Tybalt in the fight scene in the beginning, and he's talking about peace, and he says, "I hate the word, as I hate hell, all Montagues, and thee." And Tybalt is saying that he doesn't want peace. He hates peace, and he hates Montagues. And I think it's really ironic because later he gets killed by a Montague. So I think this quote is just foreshadowing his death. This quote I chose is said by Friar Lawrence when he's talking to Romeo about marrying Juliet. And he says, "The sweetest honey is loathsome in his own deliciousness, and in the taste confounds the appetite." And so he's using honey as a metaphor and saying honey is very sweet and it's delicious, but if you eat too much, you'll be sick. And so he's talking about love. If love is great, but if you love too much, then it can be a bad thing. The fifth quote I chose is said by Lord Capulet when he finds out that Juliet died. And he says, "Death lies on her like an untimely frost upon the sweetest flower of all the field." And he's using a flower killed by a frost as a metaphor. Like, Juliet is a very beautiful flower, and she was killed by an untimely frost or an untimely death right before her wedding to Paris, and how unfortunate it is. And I think it just shows how Lord Capulet loves his daughter, and he's sad to see her die, even though she's not dead. The next quote I chose is said by Friar Lawrence, and he says, "Wisely and slow, they stumble that run fast." And he's talking to Romeo because Romeo's in a rush to go see Juliet and tell her that they're going to be married. And Friar Lawrence is saying, slow down. People that go too fast often will make a mistake and they'll regret what they did. So take your time and don't rush into this. The last quote I chose was the last line of the play when the prince says, "For never was a story of more woe than this of Juliet and her Romeo." And I love this quote because I think it just sums up the story perfectly. And if you weren't sad before, hearing this quote will make you sad, and it leaves an impression with you that you just want to grieve with the characters because of the sad story that occurred. So I think it just sums up the story good.